Well, hello, welcome to Catalytic Conversation. It is a small bunch here with us today. We might have some people join us later on, but I'm very happy that we have in the virtual room Wolfgang Hoffman, Morag Deyes, and Victor Ruban. I don't think I need to do the regular Catalytic Conversation chat, so I'm just going to say we've got dance juggernauts in the room, basically. Um, Wolfgang Hoffman, if I can just bring up the nice little bio here, has been a festival director, choreographer, dancer, dance teacher, and artist representative. Growing up in the GDR, he trained as a tool maker and came to dance at the mature age of 21. In 1990, he co-founded Fabric Potsdam, a venue for music and dance in Germany, and set up the Potsdamer Tanztag. I hope I pronounced that correctly, an annual dance festival. With his company Fabric Potsdam, he produced and danced in 12 different shows and toured over in 20 countries worldwide. In 2001, he founded Aurora Nova, a highly acclaimed venue for physical theatre and dance in Edinburgh. And from 2004 to 2008, he was the director of the Dublin Fringe Festival. He now runs Aurora Nova as a theatre booking agency and consultancy firm out of Berlin, representing the newest trends in contemporary circus, physical theatre, and new theatrical forms for venues and festivals around the world. Morag Deyes, who needs no introduction, but she's going to get one anyway. Morag Deyes, MBE, was Artistic Director of Dance Space, Scotland's National Centre for Dance in Edinburgh from 1994 to 2021. She now works for the organisation as curator for its Edinburgh Fringe Festival season and other projects. After training in Edinburgh in ballet, tap, flamenco, jazz, and contemporary, Morag went on to dance professionally and has taught and choreographed work around the world. Morag was artistic director of the Bath Fringe Festival from 1990 to 1994. Morag Deyes was the creative force behind the transition from Dance Space's previous home at the Assembly Rooms to its current Grassmarket site. She has hugely successfully and programmed the urban, she has directed, and the hugely successful and programmed the urban dance stages for Edinburgh's Hogmanay celebrations in 2004-2006, and she received the MBE for services to dance in Scotland in Queen Elizabeth's New Year's Honours List in 2007, and the prestigious Spirit of the Edinburgh Fringe Award. Victor Ruban, our final guest on this Catalytic Conversation, is a performer, dancer, choreographer, researcher, educator, and coach who works on a project basis in Ukraine and abroad. He is the Director General of Ruban Production ITP Limited, Program Director and co-founder of Impulse of Transformation Independent International Dance Platform, and the Program and Artistic Director of Venue #Kyiv Dance Residency, a platform for international studies in somatic dance and performative practices, movement-based art, and research. I myself am Tony Mills. I'm the Artistic Director of Dance Space, Scotland's National Centre for Dance, and I'm very happy to kick off this catalytic conversation. Over to someone on the panel. There we go.
Okay, I'm going to jump in and say, imagine that you threw a party and nobody came.
Well, you know,
okay.
as you mentioned, it's quality, not quantity. And we've definitely got quality here today.
Thank you so much, Tony. So thank you for that introduction. That was wonderful. And well, it's great to be here. It's fantastic to be able to have this catalytic conversation. When I was asked to do one, months and months ago, there was absolutely nothing I felt that I could bring to the table. And so I waited, and then I thought, who do I most admire out of curation skills, but also who do I most admire, what organization do I most admire about being transparent and also giving artists and opening up artists to lead the way in terms of curation and production. And of course, the life-changing event that was walking through the doors of Aurora Nova was just literally turned my head around. It turned everything upside down, and in a beautiful way. The minute that you walked into St. Stephen's Church in Edinburgh during the Fringe when Aurora Nova was there, it was like you could feel in the air that something was happening. There was like a frisson, a tingle, something was cooking in there, and it was just beautiful and liberating. And the shows that Wolfgang and his colleagues put on there were absolutely extraordinary and brought to a fringe audience the kind of work they'd never seen before. Huge amounts of integrity and skill and poetry and dynamism and courage and all the things that we know and love and want to hang into and hold on to for dear life. So I thought I would approach Wolfgang. What the hell? I didn't get where I am today without having a brass neck. So I decided to get in touch with Wolfgang and ask him if he would be interested in doing this, because he was the only person I wanted to bring into the Catalytic Conversation. So during this chat with Wolfgang, we realized that there might be even more interesting things to talk about on top of the birth of Aurora Nova. But I really would love to thank him very much at this moment for saying yes initially, but also for opening this door to meet Victor and to talk about artists in Ukraine, because that is a supremely important thing to do right now. But first, I really, even myself, I don't know exactly how Aurora Nova was born, how that came together, how the organization was run, how this transparency worked, the sharing. I think the sharing of the box office, I found so inspiring too, Wolfgang, that I understand that artists shared the box office between them. You really were truly an open cooperative. So I'm going to stop talking now and hand over to Wolfgang, and hope that you can tell us a little bit about this extraordinary organization, Wolfgang.
Thank you. I will. I feel very flattered by that, by that introduction. And I must say, I do have the feeling sometimes, because you're not the only one speaking this kind of high praise. I have this feeling sometimes like that. I go like, was it really that great at the time? I was, yeah, sure, we had a good thing, but it was, yeah, it was just a venue with shows in it. And yeah, it was about collaborating and about working together, yeah, I should probably start by how it came, how the idea was born. Which came from having experienced Edinburgh as an artist. I came there in '99, and we with the Russian-German co-production Hopeless Games, a show. It's probably best described as cantoresque in style, like half Buto, half silent theater, gestural theater, with people with white faces, most of them shaven heads and black coats on, and that was a production that we felt very proud of, but we didn't get any audience when we started to perform, and we were flyering at the time. We were still putting posters up on the walls at night, flyering during the day, sitting on our van, driving around, handing out, and still at the evening managed no more than like 5 or 10 people in the audience, and it felt absolutely desperate. After 2 weeks, we thought we never come back here. It's just an awful failure. And then a journalist came and reviewed our show and gave us a 5-star review on our second last day at that venue. And suddenly everything changed. We had a sold-out house, and audience were recognizing us on the street and giving us high fives. And on the last day of our performance, we received one of those fringe firsts. And there was a queue around the building, and I'm not joking, it was basically around the block. And I thought, like, I'd never seen anything like that for contemporary or for dance, you know, such an excitement for the kind of hot ticket in town. People tried to climb through the window and stuff to see this last performance, and to see basically these both possible sides, what it's like to not succeed, and then to have that much of appreciation for your work, felt unreal and had us hooked. And we came back the next year, and were invited by Comedia Brighton, who ran a venue which is now the Zoo Southside venue, and we did the performance there and had a sold-out run, which was great. And lots of presenters came and invited us to foreign countries, and we had the success that we dreamt of. but the situation at the venue was very difficult, as in like there was no space to warm up. As a dancer, we were lying in front of the toilets doing our stretches and having people walking over us. We had to fight with the shows before to not kind of hide our lamps and sockets for the lights and so on. And then when we were taking our applause after, that was kind of, for me, a kind of crucial moment. There was a big production afterwards from students from the US, and the stage manager came and he basically held my collar when I was trying to go back on stage and shouting at me, going, you're 7 minutes over your time, you're not get back out there, we have to change over. And he was so stressed and needed to, that I went like, hello, everyone coming in. I was just in the middle of, I'm Wolfgang Hoffmann. Maybe we should do a quick introduction, or we...
I will do a quick introduction just for everybody. Thanks for joining us. I guess maybe there was a little bit of confusion about the start time. I apologize if that's come from our end, but for the necessity, for Victor, who's our guest on the talk, it's very important for us to start the conversation and get it recorded for his purposes back home. We have on the chat today, I call them the dance juggernauts. I'm going to stick with that term. We have Wolfgang Hoffman from Aurora Nova, founding Aurora Nova in 2001, also used to be the artistic director of the Dublin Fringe Festival. And of course, the lady who needs no introduction, but she gets one anyway, Morag Deyes, MBE, artistic director of Dance Space, Scotland's National Centre for Dance from 1994 to 2021. And last but not least, Victor Ruban, performer, dancer, choreographer, researcher, educator, and coach who works on project basis in Ukraine, who is the Director General of Ruban Productions ITP Limited. And we are just going to get right back into where we left off with Wolfgang giving the origins of Aurora Nova.
So I was just to quickly summarize, describing my first experience as a dancer in Edinburgh in 1999, where we had a very difficult run in Edinburgh to start with, and then followed by a massive success at the very end. Came back the second year and felt like we had a lot of success, but we felt like it was clear that not everyone, that some people were being envious about this, and we felt we had to, we didn't feel it was a fair setup, because some people came with many like big productions with lots of marketing, and other people just had themselves to kind of fly and fend for, which is something that I felt really uncomfortable with, this kind of whole self-promotion. But ultimately I saw the potential of Edinburgh with this kind of word of mouth that can so heat up a show and bring it to the fore for the audience attention, that I thought this is the biggest thing that Edinburgh has to offer, and that we can tap into if we are doing a different setup, where we create a venue that is just associated with quality work, and where the artists are working together and helping each other to give themselves this word of mouth by talking to their own audience, who believe them because they've just seen them perform, and saying like, you need to see the other show here because that is really great. And so I thought it's not only more efficient, but also nicer to do when you're talking about something that you're genuinely excited about, than trying to blow your own trumpet. And so at the time I suggested to David Lavender and Tim Hawkins, who ran St. Stephen, who ran this Southside venue on Nicholson Street, whether I could take it over, whether I could program it for the year after. And they said that wasn't possible, but they had another venue, which was St. Stephen's Church, which they would hire. And so David and Tim believed in my curational abilities. And I must say, there was about the program, there was one thing that I found strange in Edinburgh, that physical theater had a really bad name at the time. People thought of physical theater just basically as bad theater. I remember reading an article by like one of those columns of a famous comedian about kind of, what do you eat in the morning, what's the Edinburgh day like, and what kind of shows do you see? And he was saying like, oh, try to see everything, only physical theater I stay away from. And I went like, that's this good stuff. Why does this have such a bad rep here? And so I thought we need to invite, physical theater from abroad of the kind that people haven't seen here, that will blow people's mind. And so that was then my mission, to start making this program. And Tim Hawkins was actually the one who said, well, I have a financial, because when I told them that we needed to break this kind of competitive spirit and to have a model where people are sharing the box office. And he said, well, that's easy to do. I have already a financial model for that. We do it just like that, that the companies, each company has basically has one share, because they have one show and everybody can sell the same amount of tickets. And we all cover the basic cost of the venue, and then everything gets shared in equal ways, where the organization is also, I think the organization was 2 shares and each company had 1 share. That was basically the model, that everything that was left over after the hard costs, like the venue rent and the equipment and so on, was paid for. Everything got shared. And so this model provided like an insurance policy for the artists who basically didn't know whether their show would gonna sell any tickets or not, but that would mean that the ones that are successful are kind of supporting the ones that are less successful. And it also meant that not only spiritually, but also kind of on financial terms, it was in everybody's interest to help the other shows. And that created this kind of, the now famous spirit of Aurora Nova, that people were really all together, and not only helping we really tried to set up the shows technically in a way that they wanted to be set up, that then very few compromises needed to be made. And that was only possible because everybody was working with each other, and it wasn't just like these 2 hours are my 2 hours, and then I don't belong to the venue outside my little slot. But like lots of activity was happening backstage, even while shows were on, but very respectfully. And then sometimes we had even people come watch the changeover from like particular shows to the next show, when there's the dance show with a silver floor and nothing else, and then suddenly the curtain opens after the applause and there's 15 Russians with bicycles and window frames and bags of leaves, and transforming the stage in seconds to then something completely different. And that was really beautiful. And we did parties with each other where like we had Brazilian parties and Polish cooking nights, and it was really wonderful to see this kind of international community grow together. And with that kind of attitude, I think we got a lot of sympathy from audience and also from the press, who loved us especially, I believe, and I felt they were treating us extra good. Just because we represented this kind of spirit that was really against competition and for collaboration. So that was the beginning of Aurora Nova. I kind of run out of steam now. Ask me a question. Morag?
That genuinely did, thanks Wolfgang, that genuinely was the spirit of the Fringe, because I'm almost old enough to know what the Fringe was like at the very beginning. And it felt exactly like that it was just sort of, it was a huge party, obviously, but it was a huge party with this incredible focus and belief on the art and the right of artists to take chances and show their work and share the spoils if there were any, and cook for each other and care for each other. And that's why you got, I believe, the Spirit of the Fringe Award, because Aurora Nova absolutely embodied all of those wonderful, not rules exactly, but belief system. I don't know what you would call them. But
my story was that it was the coincidence that I gave Jim Haynes a croissant that I had that I had basically skived off of a British Council, my very first British Council reception that I went to, and I stood in the corner. I didn't really know how networking worked, being kind of very shy and kind of looking at people's labels, and wanted to desperately talk to someone from New Zealand there, but didn't really, was too tongue-tied to get a start chatting to them, and my English wasn't so great at the time. And I stood at this kind of free bar with all these kind of pastries, and at the end, when the room, like everybody left, there was all these pastries left over, and I went like, what's happening to all those? And they said like, well, we chucked them, you know, because they've been all touched and whatnot. And I says, can I have them? I have a bunch of artists that, and so I had these kind of stack of pastries, and I walked down the street towards St. Stephen's, and somebody came up, an older gentleman came up walking, and I basically, he just smiled, and I just offered him a pastry, and we chatted a bit, and I kept walking my way. And little did I know, he was on the way. That was Jim Haynes, who was one of the founders of the Fringe, and he was apparently on the way to that first jury discussion about who should get the very first Spirit of the Fringe. and I was an absolute nobody, and this was supposed to be going to someone long-serving and who had made a big impact on the Fringe, and there were apparently like candidates being discussed and people couldn't agree. So I was basically came through the side door via a croissant.
That's fantastic. Couldn't have chosen a better person. He was also the editor of the first ever sex magazine that wasn't Playboy, it was called Screw. And he was very, he was very legendary for that. But Jim Haynes and Richard DeMarco are the ones who started the old Traverse in the Grassmarket, where Dance Space is. And these circles within circles. But what a wonderful, wonderful story, Wolfgang. and with stolen croissants as well, which just makes it even better. It was such an amazing atmosphere, you know, at Aurora Nova. As I said before our guests arrived, I was just saying, you know, when you walked through the door of St. Stephen's, you just felt that something was happening, that it was like a crackle in the air, and it was just extraordinary. It was beautiful. And how long did it run for, Aurora Nova? How many years was it?
7
Oh,
years.
okay.
And 7 programs, and I tried to hand it over to the then venue manager Joe Duffy, and she was kind of up for it, but then she got offered a festival job in Australia and Darwin, and couldn't do it anymore. And then there was funding problems from Comedia, who had always been the Comedia was only for the first 5 years, and then for the last 2 years it was Assembly, who then underwrote this operation, because it was always like not a profit-making business. So we always started from scratch every year, kind of looking into, somebody needed to underwrite the risk for the kind of basic costs, and so it was Assembly then in the last 2 years.
It was such an incredible program, and it was so international over the years. Everything from Ireland to Brazil to all sorts, Czech Republic, everywhere. How did that happen, Wolfgang? How did you manage to collect all of these amazing shows?
Well,
did they get in touch with you?
Initially, I was basically looking into like a lot of Eastern Europe. And that was where my cultural connection came from, coming from GDR. And I had seen amazing physical theater work. So in the first year, we had shows from Poland, Russia, Czech Republic, 3 from Russia actually, and then we had an Indian, a Brazilian, and a Japanese show in that first program. And I felt, if this was going to go wrong, I have basically no friends left, because I had really told people of this opportunity, and but also knowing that they would all take a huge risk of possibly coming away with having lost a lot of money from this. And the first year started slow, but then became this real success with all these awards won. And from then on, it was, I mean, no, actually every year I had to kind of fight hard to get the good shows because I couldn't promise any fees. We often had shows fall out at the last minute, and then something else had to come in. But it became easier and easier in terms of like, because everybody seemed to want to be part of Aurora Nova very quickly. And then it just became like this big job where I felt I had this responsibility to answer all these people, and it was a job that very like, it just didn't sustain me for very much. I didn't get a fee in the first couple of years, I think, and then a small fee, but that was not paying me for a year of curation. And so it was getting harder and harder to sustain at this level. Yeah, being and so it felt like right to hand it over to someone else to continue. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. And when it then was not there for the first year, people seemed to get sad, but then they seemed to get even more sad the longer it wasn't there, which I thought was interesting, that it hadn't disappeared, but sort of the memory of it seemed to become stronger at the time, that the longer it wasn't there, which I found a really fascinating thing. And now some people talk about it as if like, yeah, everything had been amazing, and it couldn't have been, you know. It's like, I know myself that some things had been chosen because we had to have another show in there, you know. And so it was like everybody who curated something before knows, you know, you can't find like 100% shows that are completely convincing all the time, you know. But yeah, at least I had the ambition or approach, and but also a good sense of pragmatism, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. And the one thing that happened, well, many things that happened because of Aurora Nova. You said again before our guest arrived, you said it was just a venue with some shows in it. Well, no, no, it was iconic, and these shows. They might be just shows to you, but to the fringe audience and to the artists who were in town, who came to the venue, they were being introduced to a whole new way of thinking about making art and using their bodies and taking risks and being courageous and often wild. And that was necessary. I think it's incredibly necessary for all of us, and artists especially were really fed by what you brought to Aurora Nova. It's just wonderful. Keeping the food element strong in this, I have to say, over the stolen croissant story, but also I love the idea that you all cooked together and presumably also ate together. And so, you know, there's that incredibly bonding spirit, which I hope will come back to the festival ere long. So people who have arrived, thank you for coming. We thought nobody was coming. We were kind of delighted that we might be has-beens and that there are, you know, the interest in what we've done or what we might do was over, but clearly not. There are some wonderful people in this room. So as I was saying earlier, when I spoke to Wolfgang about coming to do this catalytic conversation, we got talking about what's happening in the world, of course, and Wolfgang was telling me about hosting Ukrainian refugees, and then we started to talk about the artists in Ukraine. And then Victor came into the frame as someone who we decided that we would like to invite to this catalytic conversation because we want to share, we want Victor to share how it is for him and his colleagues at the moment, and how everyone in this room and beyond, hopefully, will tell your friends, can support what is a situation that none of us gladly have ever experienced. So Victor, I'm so delighted to have met you. And I also want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to do something. You were thanking us earlier, and I think it's important for you to know that we are also glad to be able to do something, because the feeling of helplessness is strong and doesn't help. So, Victor, would you like to tell us how you're doing and what you're doing and what we can do to support all of those things?
Thank you so much for inviting and also for joining us. And it's quite an honor to be with you on this conversation, because of what you are doing and what I've discovered through our dialogue is really incredible. And not for the dramatism of the situation, but also just to kind of affirm this. I would like also to say thank UK and for helping us with the weapons and also with your solidarity already. And also to thank our military defense and the people that are fighting at the moment on the east, on the south of Ukraine, and also our air defense systems, because they are allowing me to speak with you, to also share this moment with you. And before that, I would like also to say that discovering your stories at the moment, it's so crazy to discover also that how many things are going in parallel, and especially in relation to the dance field, because most of my activities and also establishing Ukrainian Emergency Performing Arts Fund as a project that is happening since February, since March. If you want to know more about it, you can just press uepaf.org.ua. Like we'll send you out information about it, just to see the statement. But it's organically growing from my desire, and my main activity in Ukraine is institutionalization of contemporary dance. And I know that Wolfgang, through our common friend, knows even more than me about the contemporary dance in Ukraine on early phase in 90s. I mean, like after Soviet Union fell apart, because Wolfgang knows Sergei Myasayedov, who was organizing one of the first festivals of contemporary dance in Ukraine. And like, if to introduce briefly the history of contemporary dance of Ukraine, is like, it's like a merry-go-round, like things are appearing and disappearing, appearing and disappearing. And why I'm saying this, that when I hear your story about 26 years of curating dance base, or about Fringe, or about Aurora Nova, and it's more than a decade of the history of this institution, it's such a luxury. And I would like to address that it's so easy to take things for granted, but it's so important also to appreciate the efforts that were done by the people coming before us, and really creating the platform that we can rely on, and to move further and to develop it. Because in Ukraine, that's why I start to speak about institutionalization, because this is something that is lacking. And at the moment, contemporary dance is represented only on the level of educational program in universities. We have the diploma, but we don't have any system for supporting development of the dance. And that's why even artists of independent scene at the moment, particularly during the time of war, they don't have a financial support from the state, because usually independent companies, they are even not having the legal body, because it's on the project basis. So even coming to ask for help, it's not really easy. And that's why when the full-scale invasion in February started, we initiated the Ukrainian Emergency Performing Arts Fund to fundraise, to gather help, and also to provide relief grants to the artists all over Ukraine who are staying in Ukraine. Because you've heard about the opportunities for the refugees and for the artists who left country. And we are very grateful for that. Like, really, if you're hosting or helping or providing, it's really important, and it's encouraging for us. But there are much more artists staying in Ukraine that are joining resistance, buying ammunition, or joining the logistical hubs, or fundraising for food or medical equipment, or even going to take the guns and really join the army, or volunteering as a medicians, like people who are helping on the dangerous territories and zones to really help with the injured people also. Because dancers and choreographers, they know about bodies, so it's easier for them also to receive the basic education, understanding of helping, providing the first aid somehow. So that's why this relief grant that we are providing is very important, because artists, they can buy food, they can pay the basic bills, and also they can redistribute those means and funds to the initiatives they would like to propose to support. And that's how, if you are supporting initiatives in Ukraine, or if you would like to support our initiative, it will be really helpful and direct help to the artists here. But speaking about the challenges, what I can introduce, or what can I say, is that Morag, I'm very grateful for your words about possibility to help, and that this initiative is also as a possibility to help and to make a change. But I can say that from here, being under bombing or air alerts, or even next to the occupied territories, it's very important to remember and to remind yourself that until you are alive, you can change something. And you are doing it anyway when you resist, and when you are committed to what you are doing and what you choose to do, and when you're really going for it. And it's very easy to be scared of those big events and those big scales of horror, of terror and everything. But even when you don't know what to do, you always can do something that you know that you can do. And those little steps are something that are helping to resist, helping to provide support, and helping to build up something together with the others. And what we learn also here, and why I'm grateful also to be a part of this conversation, is that when you are really putting yourself in the shell of the walls, or of like really isolating yourself from the possibilities and from challenges and from taking responsibility for making this change, it's easy to be broken. But when you embrace the situation, and when you go fiercely against it, and you don't think too much when you can do something, and you know that this exactly will affect the situation, there is always a room to do something and to change. And it comes only with solidarity and transparency and engagement and involvement. When you start to speak about the needs, when you start to speak about the challenges, when you are trying to find peers or people who are on the same vibe with you and see this challenge together. Like, for example, when we got connected with Wolfgang, I told it already, and this is also my way also to thank him, that when we initiated this platform, it was just a possibility of gathering funds and also gathering requests. And as you may imagine, that number of requests was immediately going skyrocket, but not donations. And when we met with Wolfgang, and I was sharing with him, and his direct response to the situation and our talks and his emails helped us to gather like the funds for the first month of donations, like 90% of donations during the first month, since we started this fund program, was coming through the connections by Wolfgang. And it was like literally from emails, from communication, from really shout outs, DMs, and so on and so on. So I'm very grateful for that to you. And also today we received support from the dance base in the frame of it, and it will also support at least 2 artists and even 3 artists, together with some smaller, even smaller donations that we had already on our PayPal account. And that's also to introduce that those small steps already started to shifting situation and encouraged and gave not only hope but information that somebody else is care about that, and that situation can be changed, and that basically we are not alone here as an artist, as independent artists, as curators, as theater makers. Like, we are all in this situation in Ukraine. We are not alone, and we are supported, and we are heard also. So this is, I think it's very important to just underline and to say that it's really great. And also regarding UK, I can say that I'm very not surprised, but this even more than gratefulness. I'm very much appreciating and discovering for myself that in Europe, amongst other countries like also Poland and Lithuania, they are directly affected by the situation, so they are very involved and engaged. But regarding the whole landscape of the Europe, help from UK, which is like, okay, what, like, it couldn't be described with one phrase, like, okay, so what can we do? Like, not ask, not talk too much, not like, you know, stirring the pot or like questioning some issues or challenges, but really like, okay, we will figure it out, but first of all, what can we do? And this direct thing is very important towards the challenges that we are all going through globally, because the war in Ukraine is not only about Ukraine. And I hope you understand that and you know that. And this direct action is very important, is very needed. And this is something that could prevent us all as a humanity from the further challenges that would be maybe even more dramatic than nowadays. So maybe this is my short, or I don't know, introduction about the situation that I could. But if you have any questions, also we'll have Q&A, and also Wolfgang can tell more also what he discovered through our communication. Maybe if you can tell something about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can just briefly tell you how, when the war started, like everyone probably, I felt sickened and I felt helpless, going, what can we do? And I immediately contacted my few friends in Ukraine, asking them what to do. And then we were, my wife really was starting to become like very, very active in hosting refugees. So we were first getting kids and from friends into our place, and kind of, we were sort of a train station for refugees, and then bringing them here, and then trying to figure out what where they could go, and then building a network of people here in Berlin, and then also elsewhere in Germany, who would house refugees. And that was a very gratifying work, because you felt like we didn't have time to worry, and didn't have time to read too many news. We were just doing the things that were that felt like it was necessary, you know, it was the necessary work. And that came up in the chat I had with Morag. It's like, when you're an artist and you're making theater or dance works, you sometimes have this kind of why question, you know. It's like, you go like, who does this affect what I do, you know? Is this really important in the bigger scheme of things? But when you're actually helping someone in need, you don't need to ask that question, you know. It's totally there's no explanation needed. And that sense of that you are helping yourself as much as you're helping them is also very, very apparent. And yeah, when then I thought I needed to let my contacts also get in on this. I felt it's not enough to just help the refugees here, who I also, then it started to get like, they were getting looked after. And I thought like about all those people that are staying behind. And so my old friend Sergey introduced me to Victor, who I felt, was doing exactly I felt an immediate heart connection with you. When we talked on the phone, it was clear you were not, thinking of yourself, your own skin, but you wanted to do something for the other artists. And it was clear that that freelancers, especially, I mean, contemporary dance is already not recognized as a major art form in Ukraine. But now those people that have been going from job to job now had no jobs, and they also felt like they were helping in shelters, were bringing out food, were working in kindergartens and hospitals, helping their communities the best they could, but they had no means to sustain themselves. And then you were talking about the difficulties with the international aid that came in, that went through so many levels of logistics, that often not the right stuff appeared at the right place at the right time, and some direct monies. And since the banking was possible, it's easy with PayPal to send money across. And so I was very appreciative of your initiative, and there was already something there for visual arts, but you were specifically setting up this emergency fund for the performing arts. So I felt very connected, and it was easy to then write many emails and kind of mass emails and saying, do help, send money here. And what I'm kind of struggling with is the fact that the war is dragging on, and it seems unfortunately like it's continued to be dragging on. And it's hard to keep the energy of this initial momentum going, because we have lives to go back to. I was just last week in Brazil and teaching, but also being brought to a favela where my perspective on life changed, or I yet again got a completely different perspective on life, and it felt like I'm meeting new people, and I feel like, oh, I want to engage here too. You know, Ukraine is suddenly taking second place or whatever in my intention, you know, and I think it must be for many people like this who said like, oh, we've heard about this and we read about what's happening on the front, and like how much news can you absorb and can do something with, and you feel like I need to move on, you know. So people are moving on, but the war is still happening, and the situation is not getting better. That's kind of my question to you, Victor.
Is there another kind of corridor that waiting to be opened, which is to do with, and it could well exist, excuse me if it is, and I've missed it, but another kind of corridor which supports Ukrainian artists coming over for collaborations, not just in the UK, but in Europe, which is not the same thing, unfortunately. So is there any possibility of doing that? I wonder if is it already happening, Victor, that there's a journey that Ukrainian artists can take out of the country if they want to work elsewhere?
Answering the question of Wolfgang about this changing the momentum, it was happening during April already, that we suddenly realized that the situation is taking the long run turn, and the miracle won't happen. We won't win so fast as we thought, and in this situation, and it was a matter of really internal work to kind of shift the gear from the reactive and responsive way, to this, from the sprint to marathon, if it makes sense, this metaphor. That and I remember that until the end of April, believe me or not, I barely had a normal sleep, and it was like only the sleep in between the alerts and in between the news, and it was like really only the moment when we felt safe. It was a time that we could sleep. It was 4 hours or 5 hours, and then we do something, and then during the day a bit, like, you know, this partializing moments of sleeping. And I remember that I really took an effort, and said myself that I don't watch news, I don't read Messenger. I really shut down myself for 1 day completely, blocking from any information from the outside, and I really spent this day with myself. Physical practice helped me also with that. I did my routine, my practice, and also just to reconnect to my body, to get back to senses. And I had like a talk with myself that if you want to burn out, go ahead, go like sprint through the marathon, but it won't help you. But if you want to do this change, you need to be sustainable. So I really keep for myself now during, like, in between all the activities, everything is on urgency still, but at the same time I kind of figure out that I keep the time to recover, like really to disconnect with the things, to really to take this time for myself in order to get back to senses, because the emotional waves, information, everything is really just like taking you with everything and just dropping into all this reality. And to really to kind of really make this like transparent barriers, so you keep connection with the situation, so you don't fall out, but you also preserve a bit the space for your senses and for your kind of sustainability. It really instant effort, really instant effort to make yourself sleep at least 6 hours a day or 8 hours a day if possible, and really take time for yourself. And it helps a lot. And coming back to the question of Morag about the corridors, it's we are foreseeing this as a problem also, because Ukraine has because of our folklore, because of our musicality that is in the folklore, because of our language, because of our multicultural background. In Ukraine, we have very skillful dancers, and like people just dance and sing since they are born. Like they are like it's a part of our culture. Like it's normal. So most of the kids are passing through the school, and boys and the girls doing or folk dance or belly dance or ballroom dance or hip hop, or like all possible forms, whatever kid likes, like just going there, or gymnastics also, or like I mean sports, or even circus. And that's why we have in pretty young age already very skillful dancers and performers, just because it's coming naturally. Most of them are not going to the professional life, they stop there. But those who stay and go to the diploma and then dancing in the companies or just joining during being teenagers, they are becoming very, very interesting performers. And because of that, like this wave with the refugees, we consider also as a, don't get me wrong, but the losing the potential, and many of performers will probably find better life in the other countries with having support, with having professional context, and you know, assistance to that, with more interesting material maybe to work with, etc., etc., etc. So many reasons to stay. So we consider it also as a threat in a way for our culture. But at the same time, we think of really keeping the space for our dancers and choreographers to come back, and also for collaboration, because the context and the situation in Ukraine even now is very rich in terms of experience. And if we speak about art not as a leisure, not as something to kind of make excited the audience and do something more creative, or like with this kind of move or this kind of, but like really thinking the art as a response to the current situation, to the reality and to the challenges. Yeah. situation in Ukraine is really so rich, so intense, and so charged that it's really the place where even from simple being, you can have so much of inspiration and so much of thoughts and so much of the ideas that it's hard to imagine, because everything is on the edge, like on the edge of living, on the edge of existence, on the edge of thought, on the edge. Yeah. So for that, I have a colleagues partnering organization who said that if there are any artists who are willing to come to Ukraine even now during this situation, to provide them more safe conditions and like really to think of the logistic that will provide them to feel secure, it's possible. So if you are having this idea, just make connect, like write to me, and we'll organize like for the smaller group or bigger group, it's possible. And there is a space that I have in Dovzhenko Center, Kyiv Dance Residency. We have partners here. I also know in different cities, like in Lviv city, in Chernivtsi, like in Lutsk, in different regions, there are different theaters that could host different activities, and will be happy to welcome artists coming to make connection, even just for the scouting visit and just to connect and to for the short run. About going abroad, it's also possible. We have some procedures, and it's the matter just of preparation with official letters and everything. We don't have any restrictions for the female artists, but we have restrictions for the male artists to cross the border. And for that, there is a procedure for touring or for like really short-term residency stay abroad. But for that, we need the letter of confirmation and also like the clear project for what it's necessary. And if you are representing this organization that would love to host or to kind of make this connection, it's just also the matter of logistics. So write to me. I'm in connection with the dance field, and we are in instant communication with the people. So we can arrange this. If you have a open call, or you just send me the description, and we will figure out whom would be the best to make you connected with. So it will help. Why it's important for us also, because we are very grateful for compassion and also for your emotional involvement. But don't get me wrong about that. There is the threat behind that when you feel empathy or sympathy, you are putting the distance toward the situation, and it withdraws you from connection. And if we want to go through this whole event, sharing the knowledge, sharing experience, sharing the tools, finding the answers together, we need to keep this openness and need to really collaborate and co-create and talk and converse. It's like a conversate. Yeah, and really to stay together and to really do something very concrete, because from that we can find solutions and we really can create those cultural dialogues and fulfill the gaps that were constructed by not only Russian propaganda, but since Soviet times. We are still dealing with that. Like we were under occupation by Russia since 17th century. So it's a lot of gaps to fulfill.
Thanks so much, Victor. And also thank you for the reminder that actually empathy and sympathy, which is a very low level of that, I know, and compassion can also create distance. And I think that that's something that well, certainly I and many others, I'm sure, tend to forget. And it's wonderful to hear about the opportunities and the possibility of collaborations for people coming to Ukraine as well. I think that Tony wants to take a little break.
Yes,
Yeah.
just to say now would be a good time maybe for a little short toilet break or coffee break, and we will reconvene at 2014 for some time for some questions. We'll probably go on a little bit later than planned, if that's all right with the our guests in the chat. just as you know, as we had a little problem with accessing, which I apologize on behalf of Dan Space. It's my first time hosting the Catalytic Conversation. But yes, if we can come back for 2014 and we'll have some questions. If you want to have some questions, please post them in the chat, or we can raise your hand and I will call on you. All right, so we'll be back at 2014. Thank you.
See you shortly.
All right, welcome back to our Catalytic Conversation. There we go. We've got Victor back. Here we go. Let's pin that. Brilliant. All right. So yes, it's that moment. It's that Q&A moment that you have a chance to ask questions to our panel. If you'd like to post something in the chat, and notice there's no questions in the chat, so please do get thinking. You can post it in there. Well, we have one straight away. Victor, did you say that there was a website for raising funds? Perhaps maybe you could post you know, any websites or emails in the chat for our guests, and they can choose to follow that up in their own time. That would be very helpful. If you'd like to ask a question directly, you could just raise your hand and I will call on you, and then you can turn your video on and your mic and ask a question. I actually have a question just to kick off, basically. All right. And I guess it's maybe more for possibly for Wolfgang after listening to what he's been saying. And I wondered how these kind of quite visceral experiences that one might have as a programmer, a curator, running a venue, a festival, etc., how they might, do they feed into your curation in some way? You've had this experience in Brazil, right now working with Victor, etc. Do you find that you want to reflect some of that through what you put out to an audience, or does it not connect or something like that? I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question. I feel at the moment a lot of curators are looking into kind of what makes the work that we present relevant. And I've been asking that question a lot, that I thought, what is this for? What are we talking about? And sometimes you feel like that art can be, or the performing arts can be very meaningless, to be kind of brutal, you know, and in that might lie its power at times, you know, and so I do love when there's issue-based work, but not when it's work that is done, oh, I have to now put this out here, and because most of the time you feel like you're talking to the converted anyway, you know, it's like, because we're in this echo chamber of art appreciators, and what I have felt a lot is that besides the reflection of our experience, art also has the power and the ability to heal, and for that, I think beauty and joy are very important aspects that often are underrated in contemporary curating. And as you said, Victor, when you said, like, you know, I can burn myself out, no problem, you know, by always working and always being up to date on what are the burning issues. But if I don't look after myself, I won't do that for long, you know. And I think, yeah, laughter and the sense of I'm okay, we're okay, we're all connected. I think this is something that in my curation has taken a much more prominent kind of space. I don't know if you saw the show Home that Jeff Sobel brought in 2019, I think, to the Edinburgh Festival, which was basically this non-verbal show of people living in a house, and it felt like all these different layers of like times when people lived in the same house, and but essentially all doing the same things, all doing things that humans do. And it felt like it ended up with like 20 people on stage, over 20 people from the audience on stage, all doing very simple things. There was no drama whatsoever in this entire show. And yet people came out of it and felt really connected with one another. And I think this was something profoundly powerful. But I also know curators that saw it and went like, kind of, it's not talking about anything urgent, with urgency. And it felt like that. Sorry, I'm going on. But maybe it gave you a sense of, was that an answer, satisfactory answer?
Well, I guess there is no, the answer is whatever it was. That was really good to hear. Again, any questions, please post them in the chat. I just wondered, just staying on the topic of curation, maybe for Morag or Wolfgang or Victor, is there ever anything that you just took a blind hit on and was a raging success? Like you just had no clue, you'd never seen it before. I don't know, you were desperate to fill a slot or something like that. And you just, okay, you're in, and it just like hit the mark.
I have an example or many examples where working with my guts helped a lot. That I sometimes couldn't explain it to myself, why I thought that was the right choice. But then other people explained it to me eventually. And I was like, that was it,
Maybe I have, for example, of opposite from the opposite part. Last year I was invited to Sofia Art Week, and it was like from the connection when I was in Düsseldorf. I met the curator of this program of Sofia Art Week, and when she approached me, she said, like, Victor, do you have spare time in this period of time? And I said, like, for what? She said, like, we have Sofia Art Week and we want to invite you. I said, like, for what? And like all my questions about the context and about what to do was like absolutely wide open. And basically she granted me a possibility to define myself, whatever I would like to do for the space that I've never been to, working with the people that I never knew before. And when I was constructing it and when I was communicating with curator, it was a lot of trust from their side, of course. I don't say that it's anything bad or something, but they had already the program and they decided that something related to performativity and physicality would be very good for the visual art context, in a way, in the urban situation. And when I was going to Sofia, I figured out that they didn't made any scouting. So basically I'm already going to Sofia and they don't know with whom I will be working. So basically I will have to find the people to work with. And I decided to be really in the situation, absolutely open and embrace it, as I said, like with everything that comes. And I spent and I had only 1 week to create the thing. And when I came there, I spent like 2 days just walking around this place. It's in the center, in the downtown of Sofia, beautiful place with the historical remainings there, like they're covered with glass and everything. And the only thing that we figured out that I will be working with the street dancers that are working there, the kids. And but we didn't have any connections. Kids are very protective and they are doing voguing and like really street style voguing. And from this communication and discovering the place, going and chatting with them, like really finding connection, and we created a beautiful video documentary about their life on the square. And we ended up this week with the panel discussion, inviting the policy makers of Sofia to fix the problem that they will be allowed juridicially supported to have the legal confirmation for them dancing there, because it was forbidden, and it was the only place where they had a huge vitrines of glass that was serving as mirrors, so they could rehearse many of them all at once. And it was such a beautiful experience for me to discover, like really going to know, like with this open mind and open desire to really to make this connection happen. And maybe this would be this example that when I didn't expect to have that, but it was really beautiful experience.
I suppose mine would be standing in the kitchen of Dance Base during the Fringe one year and just hearing some African music, street music, I suppose you could say. It was JIT, actually, I later discovered, and went out and hung out and chatted to them and said, it would be really great if you could come back next year. And he said, okay. And it was a very, very, very vague communication that was going on with us and this particular group from Soweto. And they turned up for their tech rehearsal, just looked at the stage and said, yeah, that'll be fine. And then they went away. We'd put again 4 hours aside for tech rehearsal. And they're like, yeah, that looks fine. We'll see you later. And one of them arrived on crutches and the other one arrived pregnant. And it was just like, oh, you know, what, how is this ever going to work? We didn't even know. And it was a huge success. It was just one of the best shows. It was one of those shows where you'll know how this is if you've curated something or if you've run something over a long period of time, that you're just kind of on your knees by week 3 and you're just kind of in a bit of a coma. And so if I got to that stage, I would just go in and watch their show. And then everything was all right. You know, the joy of the whole thing was just completely glorious, but entirely unexpected. The festival producer that year was going out of her mind. What are they doing? What are they bringing? Who's coming? How many? What's nobody knew. No, we didn't know what the show was until we saw it, basically. And yeah, it was joy, absolutely, from beginning to end.
Sounds beautifully chaotic.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Well, look, we haven't had any more questions, so I'm just gonna ask one more, and then we can wrap things up, actually. And it takes me back to, I think, 2008 when I was at the Dublin Fringe Festival, and my crew had been very gratefully invited by Dance Base to go and do a show over there. And I met Wolfgang in the bar, I think at Project Art Center, and I wanted to pick his brain about, like, you know, how to sort of, like, I don't know, be successful in this kind of, you know, contemporary dance business. And I always remember what he said was that you just need perseverance. You know, the word perseverance kind of permeated and it stuck with me for a very long time. And I always pass that on to other people, really. So I just wanted to ask each of our panel members, maybe just kind of like one word or one sentence that kind of maybe sums up maybe, I don't know, your approach to curation or your approach to working with artists right now, in the past, or possibly in the future, you know, and then we'll wrap things up there. So I open up to our panel about, yeah, your approach summed up in a sentence or a word, even if possible.
I'm drawn to the audacious, I have to say, and even if it's ballet, you know, it's still, if it could just please be audacious, if it, whatever it is, if it's got some kind of sense of, it's just a long sentence, right?
But audacious is great.
If it's taking if it's taking a risk, if it's honest and true and audacious and joyful, hopefully joyful. Even the tragedies can be joyful if they're done well.
Yeah.
I can say to stay truthful and to stay curious. This is, if you are not curious into what you do, just stop doing it.
And yeah, maybe joyful perseverance is a good one to yeah, I felt that, I mean, that's going to be a long sentence, but I felt that in the pandemic, my business has like literally crashed, right? I mean, it was going well, and suddenly everything, and the government help, which in Germany was great for most people, did not work for my company for some other reason. But I felt that I knew what I was about. It wasn't my mistake. I hadn't made a big cock up that led to this. So it was just a situation that had to be dealt with. It was threatening. I had to mortgage my house and all of that. But I felt never despairing. You know, I always thought, you know, we deal with the now in a positive way. You know, and I think that's, I'm blessed with that kind of confidence. I don't know where I'm feeding, where my well is in that sense, but I always have a kind of have had that that when it hurts I laugh, you know. It's like and I keep going, and so that's why joyful perseverance kind of fits my approach well, I think.
I was gonna end there, but we actually have someone who's sneaked in with a question for Victor, and the question is, Victor, how do you dance in a war zone?
At the moment, my dance is doesn't look like with the music and you know, with the movement like as a dance. But I can say because like I cannot even produce dance because I don't know what kind of language, like if dance is a language, what kind of language will fit to the situation. And but a part of that, I might say that all the challenges that I'm going through here and deal with the community, with my peers, with my beloved, with the people, it's all happening as a instant dance. I mean, like as a metaphor, because the reality is quite a flow and with so many things that the only way that helps me not to bump instantly into all the events and situations is really to consider them as partners to dance with. So this is my way of dancing at the moment.
Beautifully put. Great. Okay, well, I'm going to bring it to a close there. And I think the words perseverance, audacious, and curious, bound by joy are probably good words to live by. Okay, I want to thank our panel, Wolfgang, Morag, and Victor, for their time and their words and a beautiful conversation. That's it. We will be making the recording of this conversation available to you, right? So you'll see the beginning of all this as well. So keep an eye on the website and the socials. And if you're able to spare 5 minutes, you will be receiving one final email from Eventbrite with a link to a feedback form. And we'd be really grateful for any of your comments. Just a reminder that if you do want to find out more about Victor's Performing Arts Fund, the link is in the chat. And if you want to contact him about possibly working in Ukraine, his email is in there also, and you can contact Dan Space if you want that information too. So just feel free to get in touch, and we'll put you in touch with Victor. Okay. So thanks so much for joining us today. And if you would like, you can welcome to turn on your videos right now and wave our conversationalists a goodbye. And we hope to see you at the next Catalytic Conversation.